Hello, everyone. I want to talk to you today about Chapter 11 Peers, Friends, and Play. Chapter 11 has some preview questions. Let's take a look at these. Should you be worried about a student who does not appear to have any friends in your classroom? What about a student who does not play? Now, that idea is for elementary, and so is this one. Is play important for your students? Okay, all four of these questions we're going to take a look at, or actually three. All three of these questions we're going to take a look at as we unfold Chapter 11. So stay tuned, and here we go. As a classroom teacher, it's going to be important for you to assess the peer status. That will help you to better understand the students with whom you're working, trying to help. It will help you to understand how to work with those students. Let's take a look at the sociometric method. This is a method in which you ask children which classmates they like, or which classmates they prefer to play or work with, and I also ask them which classmates they dislike. And then you can create what is called a sociogram, and this is a social map of the classroom. And this will help you to understand where everyone fits in your classroom. Now, I would like to strongly encourage you to proceed with caution if you choose to assess the peer status. The reason is you might, if you do this inappropriately, you might be encouraging the isolation of some students. So I would not do this in a full classroom setting. I would make this an independent type scenario where you do it one-on-one per student, because you don't want to, if you call it out aloud in class and everyone is hearing, and this child says they don't like that child and blah, 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 then you've just kind of set a negative tone in your classroom. So proceed with caution if you choose to assess the peer status in this way in which you're asking these questions to these children. Or teenagers, you can do this with the teenagers. Now, sometimes you can make these assessments based on observation, how you observe them treating others over a period of time. Now, one student, Johnny, may come in and he's very mad at Heather, and that may just be because they just had a fight, or they had an issue, a disagreement. And tomorrow Johnny comes in and they've made up, and Heather is his best friend again. So you can't just base this on one setting of an observation if you do the observation method of this sociometrics. You can usually, if you closely monitor and observe your students, you can usually figure out pretty quickly, because they'll make certain comments, or they will display certain actions, and you can pick up on that and make those charts based on just observations, and you can make that sociogram based on that. Okay, I did want to apologize again. Last week when I made the lecture video, my voice was almost gone. It's back, but I'm still struggling this week with my allergies, and I'm still struggling with my voice. So again, this week it sounds a little raspy, but it is a lot stronger than it was last week. I hope my voice continues to strengthen as the week goes on. Okay, now let's talk about the peer status. The popular peers, the popular student in the classroom. This is typically about 15% of the population of a classroom. This population is liked by many peers and disliked by very few peers. And then we have the rejected students, and again, this makes up about 15% of the classroom. These rejected students are disliked by many, and they are liked. I mean, now when I say disliked, that means they say, I don't like them at all. And the few students that do like them is very few. The neglected student, this makes up about 10% of the student population of a given classroom. The neglected are liked by few, or they are disliked. They're going to receive disliked votes. These students are typically not even noticed by most of the children or the students in the classroom. Now, again, you can do this, you can make that sociogram via private ballot and collect those private ballots. Again, if you do that in a classroom setting, they're going to talk about it, and they're going to tell their peers, I listed so and so as, what did you list? And before you know it, it's going to spread across the room if you do the secret ballot. But that is another way of doing that sociogram, and I apologize for popping that in right there, but I just thought of that as we were working our way through this slide of notes. But the neglected student, they're not even really noticed. Students might make comments like, oh yeah, he is in our class. Don't know much about him, but I know he's in our class. Then we have the controversial student. This makes up about 6% of the population. And many like these students, and then they also are disliked. So this student is going to be the combination. And that's about 6% of the student population. And then we have the average student. This makes up 40 to 60%. This is the main population, the majority of the population of your classroom. And these students are moderately liked and moderately disliked by their peers, but they are in that majority circle of the classroom. Types of peer status. We see that many positive nominations, and we see few positive nominations. We see many negative nominations, and we see few negative nominations. And you see that you have the controversial and the popular in the positive nominations, and then in the few, that's the many positive, and then the few positive, we see that there are the rejected and the neglected. And then you can see, according to this chart, the culmination of the average of the classroom. Popular children, and popular students in general. This can carry over, into the upper grade levels as well. The sociometric popularity includes those students who are very well liked by their peers. The perceived popularity, they are often disliked, but they have a high social impact and prominence in the classroom or in that class group. Sometimes they're called popular by the teachers or the students. They often are controversial, especially the girls, or they are rejected, and these are the boys who become rejected. And this is more common in high school than in elementary school. By the time they get into high school, they have been categorized as being the popular student. Now, keep this in mind. When you focus on the popular student, they're popular because of their outgoing personality, their characteristics, their aggressiveness, assertiveness, because they can accomplish things well. They might be very well accomplished athletically speaking, as well as academically speaking. those tend to be the popular persons, the popular students. They can, we talked about they can often be disliked. They are often disliked by those that are not as popular because sometimes they have a tendency to be jealous of those who have all of those attributes and characteristics. So they become jealous of those students. So that causes them to dislike those popular students, or what are considered the popular students. Stability of peer status. This has to do with the controversial and the neglected students who are most likely to change status across time. I have seen this. I have seen students who are in elementary, they tended to be more neglected, they tended to be the controversial, and by the time they get into high school, their status changes. They become one of the popular in-crowd students. They can change across time. Sometimes this status doesn't change until they get out of high school and into the real world setting. Even perhaps when they go to college, they're in a completely different environment. They go to college away from home. They set their own status at this point, so their status can change. The rejected, however, are the least likely to have the ability to change their peer status. They are rejected. They tend to remain in that beaten down status, and that beaten down mindset, so they never rise above their status and do not change as easily and frequently. Now, that's not to say that it cannot happen. It's just to say that it's not the typical norm. Types of rejected children. Okay, if the rejected aggressive student or person, they think that they are more popular than they truly are. They think they are all that, but in essence, their aggressiveness reduces their popularity status, their all that mindset. They've got it in their minds, it's just not happening in the real world setting. The rejected, withdrawn, they see themselves as extremely socially incompetent. They feel like they just don't have what it takes, so why even bother to try? And they feel very incompetent when they compare themselves to others in their class. What does peer rejection predict? Well, it predicts that these students will have low academic achievement. They will have psychological distress through victimization, loneliness, low self-esteem, and yes, they can even spring off into suffering with depression. They will also have aggression within them. This aggression within them also can spill out into their actions and how they interact with other people. This is the cycle of aggression. You see that they have hostile attributions. They become aggressive. They experience rejection. They have increased hostile attribution bias. And then they have increased aggression, and the cycle continues on and on. Their increased aggression leads to their hostile attributions, so on and so forth, and the cycle is continuous. Relations between peer status and social behavior. We see the controversial group. They have moderate high aggression, and they're high pro-social people. They tend to be popular, and they have low aggression and high pro-social attributes. They are concerned about helping other people. Then we see the rejected group. They have very high aggression, and they have that low pro-social attribute of being concerned about helping other people. And then we see that that neglected group. They have low aggression and they also have low pro-social attributes. They are neglected. I don't really exist to anyone, so why should I care about helping other people? But they are also low in their aggression, so they're not going to aggressively assert themselves. And then you see the average portion of the classroom makes up a moderate aggression and a moderate pro social. It's not really on the high end, it's just in the moderate average level. And that's the majority of the population of a classroom setting or a class of students. What predicts peer status? Well, the pro social behavior, the aggression, social withdrawal. The shy students are even when they're among their familiar peers, they are still somewhat socially withdrawn. So if they're typically the shy students, if they're one-on-one with their best friend, they're okay. But even if they're in a small group of their familiar peers, they're going to withdraw socially. Their shyness overcaps their familiar peers, and they're going to be a little more withdrawn. Their social skills, and then, yes, the parenting risk factors play a part here. The marital conflict going on within the home, as well as the divorce, can predict their peer status. Harsh and power assertive discipline that they receive at home. If the father has negative interaction with the child, or if there is maltreatment and abuse going on, that's going to be a predictor of the peer status that the students experience. Parent choices of the child's peer world. The parent dictates and dominates the child's peers and friends. And then parent coaching the social skills, that plays a factor in as well. And that is these last two are very good for parents to be actively involved in the child's peers. You want to protect your child and not let him get into the wrong crowd. And also you want to coach the child in his social skills and teach the child to have the appropriate social skills. Not all parents do that, though. Classroom implications for peer status. As a classroom teacher, you can help the students to reduce their aggression and increase their pro-social behavior. This is where you step in and you take the role of the parent while the students are in your classroom, and you teach how to reduce the aggression and how to increase the pro-social as far as caring for the other students and being compassionate toward each other in the classroom. You also help the students develop a better emotional regulation, helping the students to recognize I'm having a moment, and how to pull away from their peers and deal with their emotion and then resume. So you teach them how to regulate, take some deep breaths, go walk around the parking lot or walk up and down the sidewalk outside for a few moments and, regain your emotional stability. You can also promote the academic skills. You can help the students to grow academically, help them to accomplish and achieve academically. Capitalize on students' strengths. Pair the student with a pro-social buddy. Arrange the student or arrange for the student to work or play with a younger student. This is always a good thing, and you can use this as, hey, we want to help. You're in the second grade. We want to look at the first graders. What can you do to help them begin to acclimate to what's expected of them in the second grade. So I'm going to pair you up with a first grader and let you just kind of be their mentor and guide them. And that's really advisable, um, because especially when you get toward the end of the year, you can pair them up with someone in a lower grade level to help them. You're helping him to learn the ropes of what you experienced so they can slide in. And that's a good thing to do. Um, you can influence the student's reputation. You can build up the students in the eyes of the other students in your classroom and help set the tone and the pace for their reputation. And you can provide opportunities for peer interaction. This is funny. This is a fourth grade girl. They were grading their classmates based on how they perceive the classmate, on their attitudes, their actions, and so on and so forth, the characteristics and attributes. And so this is a fourth grade girl's perception of how she gave grades and feedback to the peers in her classroom. She said Samantha gets an A+ because she's pretty. Gabe gets an A+, ooh la la. So she must be thinking he is one hot little fourth grade dude. Rick gets a C+. He's just an average. She had no comment about him, but we gained that he's a C+. He's on the upper end of the average. Bryce is a B-. He's kind of on the lower end of the moving into the upper end. She scratched out this student's name. You can't read it, but this student is an F-. He's as low as you go because he is she is a brat. Katrina, A+. She's very nice. Dominique is a B+. Kiefer, let's see. Kiefer gets a question mark, it looks like, because she never really met him. She never really noticed Kiefer, doesn't know anything about Kiefer. So Kiefer just gets a question mark. I don't know how to grade him. Carissa gets an A+. Kent is an A+, and he's another ooh la la with a kiss and lovebirds. Is this her boyfriend? Is this her want-to-be boyfriend? Katie gets an A. Derek is an A+ because Derek is nice. Aubrey gets an A+. Mike is an A+. Mike C is an A+. He's adventurous. Kind of funny. So apparently he is like a funny, humorous kind of person. And then Mike V gets a C-. He likes me. Ew, gross, sick. Okay, so like Mike V is probably an okay person, but Mike likes her and she doesn't like Mike V. So I'm going to give him a C-. He's not an F-rated. He's not a bad person. He's just like, I don't like him. I don't want him to like me. I don't want to be his girlfriend. And then she gives herself an A. So that is kind of funny. That would be a fun project to do with a group of students. I would be very cautious possibly of doing this in high school. You might attempt it. If it doesn't go well, don't do it again. But it might be a fun project just to see how your students are viewing each other. Cooperative learning promotes academic achievement, social interaction, peer relationships. It promotes motivation and it promotes fun. I did a great deal of project-based learning, cooperative learning experiences. The students either had a partner to work with or they had a small group to work with. They had a project to complete. They had an assignment to research and work together and collaborate on their findings. I always felt that this was good for them because they learn from each other. It gives them that social interaction. Listen, students need talk time we all need talk time. Um, One of my best friends lives in Wyoming, and we've just recently connected into Marco Polo. And we don't always get to interact. Our time frames are different. We're just very busy people, but we have so much enjoyed our Marco Polo because I just got through sitting down and giving her a very long chat. So she will send me one through Marco Polo, and I will get to see her talking to me, and we get to interact. She tells me a whole lot of stuff, asks me questions. I respond to her, and then I tell her a whole lot of stuff. And we might do a Marco Polo video, that might last 40 minutes or 45 minutes. My husband said, "Oh, I'm so glad." He said, and sometimes he'll tell me, "Isn't it time for you to do a Marco Polo with Eve? You need to get your talking out." And he tells me that when I get really chatty with him, and he's not as chatty of a person as I am. So it's really funny. But students need that social interaction. And if they are required to just sit in a classroom, dig into their work, be quiet, don't talk, shh, be quiet, um, that goes against the grain of students and in general people's very nature. So they need that talk time out. So if you are directing that talk time and keeping them engaged in the lessons, then they're actually getting to do their social interaction, and it's all geared around the assignment that they've been given, the work that they're doing, the research that they're doing, and the discussions on the assignments. That's a good thing, and they're getting that talk time in as well. So please, please, please keep that in mind when you're working with your students. And the students think that this is fun, and it's actually motivation for them to dig in and get the work done, and to dig in and learn and understand the work, as well as having a positive learning experience. Effective cooperative learning. In order for your cooperative learning to be effective, you have to hold both individuals as well as all, members of the groups accountable to. This is the criteria that you have to accomplish. These are the things, the steps that you have to take, and you have to make evaluations of the criteria very clear to the students. You have to actively monitor the groups as they are working. You cannot give them their group assignments and then go sit at your desk and do your work and leave them to their own devices, because that's when they tend to get off track. So actively monitor those groups. Use groups of anywhere from 2 to 5. Typically, they're partners. If they're in teams of 2, you can call it a team. You can call it a partner group. But groups of 2 to 5 students, typically more than that, can cause many complications. Use tasks that are open-ended or ill-structured. Make sure that each student in the group has a specific role. I always created roles when I gave my assignments, and the roles that were needed depended on how many people I put in a group. For example, I might just have one computer in the group, or 2 computers in the group. And then I would assign, okay, so you're assigned to the computer and you're assigned to the computer. You're assigned to be the note taker. While these 2 students are looking up the information, you're taking notes by hand. You're writing out the notes and jotting it all down. And then you in the group, you're assigned to be the timekeeper, and you're assigned to make sure that each person stays on task, and you are recording the minutes of the group as he's taking the notes of the information that's being found, but she's recording the time frame, how much time was spent on finding this fact, how much time was spent on this, when did your group start your work, when did you finish, who said what, within the group. So the timekeeper / recorder, they're like working as a secretary in an organization that would be taking the notes. and recording the time frames and so forth. So if each person has a role in the group, each person is going to be actively involved in the group project. And I always gave the assignments to the students and I rotated them. Okay, so yesterday you two were the researchers, and I would just rotate the group assignments. Today you two, you're going to be the timekeeper, the recorder slash timekeeper. You're going to be the note taker. And you two are going to be the researchers. So switching up the group roles frequently helps also. And making sure that each student has a specific role. Train the students to be able to explain the work. You're going to be the spokesperson for the group, but each one of you must be able to insert some type of explanation related to and pertaining to what you researched and came up with. So you, the instructor, you, the teacher of this class, you dictate and dominate how the groups function and make sure that they stay actively involved in their group task assignments. Friendship and peer networks. Reciprocated friendship is that I'm sorry, I just got distracted by a message that was sent to me by a former student of mine who is now a classroom teacher. I was glad to get that notice from her. But reciprocated friendship, both children nominate each other as a friend. Okay, now this is if you're electing officers in the classroom, or you're having them to nominate who would be your friend in the classroom. You see this kind of thing happen. The reciprocated friendship. I nominate you to be my friend, and I nominate you to be my friend. They do this also when you're doing class elections. They're friends, so they're going to nominate each other. I nominate you for president. I nominate you for vice president. They're going to kind of cover each other. The unilateral friendship, this is the one where one child nominates one friend, but that friend does not nominate him back to be a friend. So I want to be your friend, but this nominated friend says, I don't want to be your friend. And then we have the cliques. This is that tight-knit group that has about 2 to 10 friends in it, and these are usually of the same sex and the same age. We see cliques going on a lot of times in the schools. Cliques can start very early in elementary. Most especially you see the cliques in middle school, junior high. You still see the cliques going on in high school. It's very sad. I've seen these cliques continue in small towns. We've lived in bigger cities. The cliques are not as prevalent in the larger areas, the larger schools, the larger towns, as they are in the small towns. Small towns are the worst at having the cliques that continue on even out of school. Homophily, that we're still talking about friendship and peer networks. Homophily is the tendency to prefer and to bond with similar people. People who have similar characteristics tend to bond together and stick together. We also see the gender segregation. This is when given the choice, boys are going to affiliate with other boys and girls with other girls. My husband and I had that conversation over the weekend. He and I do like to golf together. We golf. I haven't really found any female golfing partners since I've lived here in Batesville. When I lived in Fort Smith, I had several female golfing partners, and that was wonderful because I just go out with the girls. We would go to the golf club and get our golf on, and then come home to our families in the afternoon, and we're good to go because we've had our girl time golfing. Um, my husband, he's got his golfing buddies. As I said, since we've been in Batesville, he still has his, he's been able to formulate male golfing buddies here, but I haven't been able to make the golfing girls team. So sometimes my only golfing is when I'm golfing with my husband. I have occasionally hung out with him and some of the guys to golf, but that's kind of awkward sometimes. But he was telling me Saturday, he said, I'm glad you're not one of those wives that demands that all of my extra free time is spent strictly with you. And I'm like, are you kidding? I like my time away too. I like to do my thing that he doesn't always enjoy doing. And he said, I'm grateful that you let me have my time to go golfing with the guys. And, I respect that in him. He still needs that as a grown-up adult. I still need that. Now, I do have my girlfriends who we like to go out and have coffee or shopping and that sort of thing. But I haven't made that golfing girlfriend yet here in Batesville. But peer pressure. Friends exert pressure on each other to conform to our way of doing things. This is our group's norm, and you have to conform to this. It can be positive, and it can also be negative. Sometimes that peer pressure can lead to negative situations and getting involved in negative experiences and actions, but it can also be more positive if you can get them into that positive, uplifting peer pressure group. And peer pressure, we can even experience that as adults. So it doesn't go away through adolescence even. Age trends in friendship. Okay, infancy and toddlerhood. Infants clearly prefer their attachment figures. They prefer to be with those people, their parents, their grandparents, and their close, their parents' close friends, those people that they have attachments to. They prefer to be with them. By the age of 1, they typically have that regular playmate in their social group. And beginning about 2.5 years, children begin to prefer their same-sex peers. Now, they're beginning to prefer that, but that doesn't mean that that's always, they only want that same-sex peer. I know my little grandson, Harrison, in his social setting, and he calls it his school, his little preschool. There's a little girl in his school that is his friend that he does play with. He's got there are a couple of little boys that he talks about, but every once in a while he'll mention this little girl's name. My granddaughter, who just turned 4, she has that too. Now Harrison just turned 3, so we're seeing, he does have those male friends, but he does have that one little girl that he talks about. In early childhood, children use the word friend, but they may not really understand what that friend word means. If I say something about, I had a cup with some candy stuffed in it sitting on top of my refrigerator the other day that I was going to give to one of my friends. It was just a little small gift I was giving her. And he said, oh, that candy, he wanted that candy in that cup. And I said, oh, you can't have that candy because that's a little gift for one of my friends. And he said, well, I need a gift for my friends. And that was cute. And so he started mentioning some names of the children in his preschool class that are his friends that he would like to give a gift to. But he doesn't really understand, that true concept of a real true friend as we know it in our age group. Most preschoolers do have friends and as said earlier, they do prefer that same sex to be their friend. About 30% of 3 to 7-year-olds may even have imaginary friends. So that's common, that's typical. That doesn't mean that they are having mental issues. That's a normal thing they create, especially if they're a single child, the only child in the family. They're going to have that imaginary friend because they want someone to play with. The middle childhood years, even more of this group, this age category has friends, about 85%. Their homophily becomes stronger at this level. Their peer networks are gender segregated. They actively avoid the opposite sex. That's where they jump in and they start saying, ew, ick, he likes me and I don't like him. Excuse me. Flirting with opposite sex at a young age is not a sign of maturity, so don't start thinking, oh my gosh, they're starting to mature. That's not true. That's falsehood there. Time with peers increases compared to their time with adults. They enjoy playing with their peers. Their peers will frolic around on the floor more than adults will. So they enjoy that. Here is a chart of the percent of observations of child companions and adult companions. And you see it goes up with the child companions and down with the adult companions. Age trends in friendship, adolescence. Most have reciprocal friends. I'm your friend. Yes, you're my friend. They reciprocate that friendship bond. Homophily increases here. Gangs become more common. We see the romance and the sexual attractions do increase definitely with adolescents. And here is that chart showing the black, the white, and the Hispanics, and the percentage of girls, and then the same thing with the boys. Okay, risk and protective factors for adolescents and sexual activities. The protective factors involved here with the adolescents moving into sexual activity is the parental disapproval of premarital. Excuse me, my dogs. Girls, stop. My dogs they're playing and distracting and interrupting me. Parental disapproval of premarital sex is a definite protective factor that you want to encourage as a parent. If the parents are married, this is also another protective factor. The parental monitoring now, not too little, and again, not too much. Over monitoring, over protecting can have an adverse effect. So parents want to be very cautious of that. But they also want to have just enough monitoring to show that they care and to set boundaries. Parent-child closeness is another protective factor. Religious affiliation is a definite protective factor. Participation in extracurricular activities. Excuse me again. Girls. I'm making a video. Keeping them actively involved in sports is they're so busy. They've got practice after school. They've got a ball game. There's very little downtime and free idle time. High educational aspirations, making sure that you've set those high standards for them to achieve as a parent. And then high intelligence. Also, they're able to think things through, think logically and rationally. The risk factors that can have a negative effect on their sexual activity at this age: permissive attitude towards sex, the unpredictable home in early childhood, Home life is up and down and unstable. The mother who was very young, or who was a young teenager when her first child was born, having early puberty, allowing early dating. Listen, I've had students when I taught in junior high, 13 years old, they're allowed to start dating, car dating, which means they're going to be dating someone older. Oh my goodness, that's only setting that student up or that child up for problems, and the ability to become sexually active young. Sexually active and deviant friends, if their friends are that way, their friends are encouraging it, it becomes the social norm, then comes the peer pressure, and so they fall prey to that peer pressure. Delinquency, depression, having low self-esteem. They want to boost their self-esteem by becoming sexually active so that they can be accepted in a peer group or accepted by a certain male or female person. And if they have a low GPA, if their grades are low, what's the reason why are their grades low? Because they've, spent more time in their sexual activity as opposed to studying, yada yada, that goes on. These two are cut off. Whoops. The last two are cut off from the video, I'm afraid. So I'm going to go ahead and mention it to you, but it's the African American ethnicity and living in a poor neighborhood. Those last two factors may not show up on the screen, but they were definitely mentioned as being risk factors for students in adolescent age becoming sexually active. Okay, I want you to think about this. Does the correlation between low achievement and dating mean that teens date because they are disengaged from school, or does dating cause the teens to underachieve? And I kind of alluded to that just a moment ago about their GPA dropping if they become sexually active. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? That's the same scenario here. Are their grades dropping because they have become sexually active, and that has caused them to become disengaged from their school? Or are they becoming sexually active because they already have the low grades? So that's just something for you to think about, process that. This is not an extra assignment for you to jump in and start doing, but this is something that you can contemplate, you can kind of dig into it and think about it. And especially if you end up teaching in high school, this is something you would want to think about and process. And it might help you to better understand the students with whom you're working and how to better work with those students. STIs, STDs, okay. STI is sexually transmitted infections, and STD is sexually transmitted diseases. Now, the diseases are the gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, herpes, AIDS. HIV is the human immunodeficiency virus. It undermines the immune system, and it allows other infections to come in and overwhelm the body. That's why the HIV can lead to AIDS, because the immune system is down. Now, it can also lead to other diseases that can overwhelm and overtake, as well as infections to overtake the body. AIDS is the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome. And it occurs when symptoms become extremely severe and the number of the T cells in the body is very, very high. What predicts the quality of friendships? Social competency, including aggression, can predict friendships. Parenting factors. Now, authoritative parenting can interfere and hinder friendships. Modeling high quality friendships can predict the quality of a friendship that the students are making, coaching friendship skills, encouraging, teaching, modeling, monitoring friendships, supervising friendship relationships and activities. And then, of course, abuse. Abuse can cause and can create a poor quality of friendships. Think about this. Imagine you have a friend whose 15-year-old has gotten into the wrong crowd and is now using drugs. Your friend decides to move that child or that student or young person to a different school. Do you think this is a good idea? What advice would you give to this friend based on research? So this is something for you to just think about, to process. You may have already experienced this with a friend of yours and had to, be their friend to help them through this kind of situation. I know I've dealt with this a lot with not just friends, but with relationships that I've made throughout our years, throughout our ministry and our life. Excuse me again, my dogs just saw a person in the neighborhood walking their dog, and they get all excited and they want to go out and bark at that dog passing by on the street. But this is a good thing to think about. What do you think would be the best scenario? What would be the best advice to give to someone in this who finds themselves in this situation with their child? This is a field observation. This is not an assignment for you to do. I wish we could do it. I'm going to leave it in here because if you want to capture this, copy and paste this or whatever, and save this for when you get, when we are released to go back into the school, or when you become a teacher yourself, this is a good thing to do. Go into an elementary school lunchroom where the seating is not assigned. I would also encourage you to do this, not just in elementary, but in junior high and even in high school where lunchroom seating is not assigned. And describe the rules that are structured. What do you see? Where are the boys sitting and where are the girls sitting? What happens when someone violates that boundary, that gender boundary? What kind of interactions are going on in the different gender groups? Ziggy, no ma'am. Compare your observation with what you found in research. This is actually a good project for you to do as a classroom teacher. You can see where your students fall in this category and what's going on. Okay, classroom implications of friendship and peer networks. As a teacher, you want to promote pro-social behavior. You want to promote attachment at school. I want you, think about attachment. They feel this is their safe zone. This is their safe environment. You want to make sure that you promote that within the classroom setting. Keep friends together from year to year. Keeping friends together in group work. Don't group aggressive learners together. Separate them. Because before long you're going to end up in arguments. No, I want this. No, I want that. No, this is better. No, this is better. You've got that aggressive, argumentative group work going on and nothing gets accomplished. So separate them. Promote opportunities to form friendships and then seek your school counselor's help for those who seem to be the friendless learners in the classroom. Here are the types of play according to the cognitive dimensions. The least mature all the way to the most mature. Excuse me again. Miley, no ma'am. Sorry. We have the functional play, which is the simple movement or the repetitive, the practice-like behaviors, shaking and rattling. Then we have the physical play. This is large movement for the joy of movement, climbing, running, chasing. And then we have the constructive play, creating or building something with a goal in mind. You give them building blocks, drawing with crayons, or coloring. And then we have the pretense or the dramatic play. That's where they transform objects and identities. They create imaginary friends. They have a type of pretense for this play setting. And then we have the games with rules, and this is where they get on the most mature spectrum. This is the explicit, prearranged rules where the children have to adapt their behavior according to the rules. They can play hopscotch, or they can sit down and play a board game, such as checkers. These are the cognitive and social dimensions of play, and take some time and focus on this and implement these in your classroom. There were days that, like once a month on a Friday, I would establish that sometimes as game day. And we would bring out the board games. We might even go outside if the weather was pretty and nice. And I did this was in high school. My high school students loved the game day. We might go outside and do an organized game. We even went out and did tennis, and we had 2 tennis courts in the little pod there, and so we would have 4 players, playing doubles, and we would have that going on. And the winner of this set or this match would play the next 2, and keep that going. So you can even do these type things in high school and establish, once a month we're going to have game day. And this month it's going to be indoor games, and next month it's going to be outdoor games. And you'll base that on the weather, of course. But the students love those game days, and it's also good learning opportunities for them. Here are the social dimensions of play. Unoccupied and onlooker, they're going to follow the others around. They're just going to kind of watch. They may even talk, but they're not going to join in. Then they're going to have the solitary. I prefer to play alone. Playmates are available, but I'd rather not play with other people. I want to play by myself. And then we have that parallel play. They're playing near the others with similar toys, but they're still not interacting with the other children. And then we have the associative play, where they borrow the toys or they follow each other, but they still do whatever each other wants to do. Whatever you want to do, I'll do it too. And then we have that cooperative play, and this is where the group is organized around a goal or a formal game, and division roles are set. This in younger children, now I hope I hope your high school students are not doing this, but this is on the younger children spectrum. I'm the mommy and you are the doggy. It's clear who belongs to the group and who does not belong to the group if you see that sort of thing going on. Now, if you see this sort of thing going on in the high school setting, you might pull over and park and say, okay, I need to really observe this because this is not normal behaviors. But anyway, in the elementary, the preschool and lower elementary levels, you'll see this sort of thing going on. Rough and tumble play versus aggression. Rough and tumble, their behavior is soft, open hand hitting, pushing, chasing, teasing, wrestling. You see this sort of thing going on the playground. They're going to play chase. Children help anyone who appears to be hurt. They're playing chase. A child falls down. Then the other child is going to stop and help them up. They care about each other. The aggressive behavior, you're going to see they're hitting them hard. They're shoving. They're kicking. They're not going to stop and help. They don't have that pro-social skill of wanting to help someone if they fall down and get hurt. The emotions, they're still laughing, they're smiling. The aggressive, they're going to be frowning and scowling. They're intent is going to be to harm. The rough and tumble, their intent is going to be fun. They're more or less expressing affection. The results of this are their further shared activities. The participants stay close together after the play is over. And in the aggressive, because they are frowning, they're scowling, they're kicking, they're hitting, they're shoving, and their intent is harm, they tend to separate. I want nothing more to do with you. When you look at the rough and tumble play and you look at the intent, they're fun, they're expressing affection. Sometimes they're tending to flirt with each other. You see this a lot with the boys are going to run up and tag the girls, or they're going to run up and pull their hair and take off running. That's kind of that early stages of flirtation going on, as opposed to the aggressive side where it's usually, I don't like you and I'm going to knock you down and then I'm going to take off running. That is the aggressive side. What does play predict? Cognitive abilities and academic achievement. It also predicts the social and emotional competence, such as the ability to have self-control, the theory of mind. It predicts the pro-social behaviors, and it also predicts the happiness status of a child or a student or person. Types of solitary play. The solitary active play involves the functional or the pretense play while they are alone. They do this alone. I do not want anyone invading my space. There is a cause for concern here. It may indicate that they have poor social skills. If a child plays alone when other children are available or others are present. Now, we can also see this in the junior high, the high school setting. This group goes over here and congregates and talks and laughs and chats, and then you've got this loner over here sitting all alone. I'd rather be on my own, maybe perhaps on my phone playing a game or something like that. I don't want to be around other people. There may be a cause for concern there. Solitary passive play is playing or play that involves construction or exploring objects while alone. These are typical activities that can typically be done alone, and there's no cause for concern here because if I've got this set of building blocks, it's easier for me. I want to build something. I'm thinking like an engineer. I am building. I've got a goal and I want to build. I want to construct my project. There's nothing wrong with that typically. I wanted you to think about this. Okay, this has been a pet peeve of mine for as long as I can remember. At an elementary school, children may arrive a half hour before school starts because of the bus scheduling. The children must sit quietly in rows on the gym floor, or I've seen them line them up in the cafeteria. I've seen them do this where they get to go in and have their breakfast, and when they finish their breakfast, put your tray away and then go line up against the wall and just sit there quietly. Adults patrol the gym or they patrol the cafeteria, and they make sure that the children are sitting still and they're sitting quietly. Is this a good policy? What do you think of the school's rationale here? Why do you think they're implementing this? What would happen if the children were encouraged to play? Now, this is not an additional assignment. This is something that I would like for you to think about. I think I'm going to go ahead and assert my opinion here. I try not to do this with you. I try to leave these to your own thinking, but I'm going to go ahead and tell you what I see. I see this happening. I've been in elementary situations where this is the norm. This is what happens. They are not allowed to talk. They're to sit still and sit quiet to make sure that no one gets hurt. They're not allowed to talk if they're eating their breakfast. This is also implemented before school. This is implemented during lunch, because, and I've heard the rationale. Well, we don't want scuffling and wrestling and this sort of thing to happen because we don't want anyone to get hurt. Okay, they're doing this while they're eating because we don't want to. If someone chokes, I want the teacher on duty to be able to see who's choking and get to them quickly because they hear the choking going on. Okay, yeah, right. Um, if we allow them talking, they're going to get too loud and we can't tell if someone is choking. Um, if we allow them to be active, then someone can get hurt and we're not going to be able to notice because there's so much commotion already going on. As you heard me say earlier in this video lecture, students, children, people need talk time. If they are forced the whole day at school to be quiet, to sit quietly in the cafeteria 30 minutes before classes start, to sit all during class without talking, do not talk, that leads to discipline problems. That leads to classroom behavior problems that can be headed off if you allow the students to have their social talk time. Children, students, people, adults, everyone needs talk time. Why are we putting such restrictions on these people when their innate says they are innate with having to have this talk time? I also think that if we give these students time for this free talk time, we can monitor. Keep your voices at an indoor level. Keep your voices soft. If you get loud, I'll call you down. It can go south really fast if you don't give them their talk time. It can be monitored talk time, but you need to allow them to have their talk time. Just like with my dogs a moment ago, they wanted to frolic and play. Typically, I would allow them to have their frolic and play time. I made them be quiet while I finished this video, but I'm about to take them outside. They love to go outside and play bubbles, and I blow the bubbles and they jump up and chase the bubbles in the air. And I take them for walks. I'm about to allow my dogs to have their playtime in the yard. So please don't think that I am being mean to my dogs, but they're about to get their playtime as soon as I finish here. But think about this little scenario here. As I said earlier, this is one of my pet peeves. Classroom implications of play. Use play to support learning. Use props, space, and time. For pretense play, use board games, puzzles, games for drill and practice, play centers. I had this set up even in the high school settings. I had different PlayStations set up around. And on Friday game day, they got to go choose the game board, the board games that they wanted to play. They could go to their centers, their stations, and play those games. Mind play, oh, I love that. Creating mind games where they have to figure out the scenarios, having them to create mind play where they create a scenario and then everybody has to figure it out. Use educational electronic games when as appropriate, and also promoting recess that may be cut off on your screen, but promote the recess time. As I said, once a month on Friday, we went outside in the class, out of the classroom as a high school student. There were times that we went out and we did running. If you can't run, then walk as fast as you can. We did all kinds of things to get us out of the classroom because sometimes, we're cooped up in that classroom. In high school, we're working. In my setting, I was English. We're researching. We're writing papers. We're discussing. Everything is in that confines of that classroom. So it was kind of a break and a relief if we could go outside and get out of the classroom. Also, I had stipulations and guidelines. You have to meet this criteria all week long to be able to get out of the classroom and go outside. Sometimes our assignments would take us outside and they would journal. What do you see going on outside? Tell me everything in your journal that you're thinking of. And we're going to spend 20 minutes outside journaling today, and then we're going back into the classroom. There are all kinds of things that you can do to get out of the classroom and get them, in a different kind of learning environment. And that is the end of this. And I love you all very much. I hope that this video lecture has been informative and helpful to you and what you're learning this week. And now I'm sorry, but I'm going to take some time and go out and let my dogs have some outdoor play time, and get out their aggressions from being cooped up in the house. Have a good week. Please email me if you have any questions regarding this week's assignments or this week's lecture video or content material. Again, I hope you've enjoyed this material. This is very good information to have.